Welcome to the Evolved Empath Summit, a free online event where you'll learn from top experts how to turn your empathic gifts into your greatest strength. Share this powerful program with your friends and family, and come join us on Facebook at The Shift Network. And now your host, Bevan Neiman.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the summit. I am so excited to talk with our next special guest, Karyn, who is an empowerment coach and certified master practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming, more commonly known as NLP, mental and emotional release, and hypnotherapy. Karyn helps highly sensitive professionals clear out their mental and emotional patterns by accessing the power of their unconscious mind. I think this is going to be an amazing, amazing topic. Welcome, Karyn, to the summit. We're so pleased to have you here to share your wisdom and insight.
Thank you so much for having me, Bevan. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you.
So I would love to just really dive into how we can, as just sort of the average person, understand the influence of our unconscious mind in our everyday lives.
Absolutely. So, if you think about everything that we do automatically, that's kind of the first thing I look at when we look at the unconscious mind. What is running automatically? And physiologically, we can look at our breathing, our heartbeat. Those are some of the things that, the digestion of our food that are always happening, and we don't need to think about those things. And when we look at our behaviors and our emotional patterns, our thought patterns, it's no different. There are parts of us that are running in the background. And so to give you an example of behaviors and how they become unconscious, are simple things like brushing your teeth or putting on your pants. What leg do you start with? It's probably always the same one. So when we learned how to do those things, we were little. And it took practice, it took intention, it took our conscious mind to be able to do that. And then as soon as we have that locked into the unconscious, it begins to run automatically. Now with emotions and thoughts, those are all developed before the age of 7, especially the ones that are really deeply rooted into the unconscious mind. And so a lot of the programs that are still running that we carry within our adult lives are unconscious as well. So if you think about any emotion that you feel, for example, happiness. When I mention the word happiness, usually people have a picture that comes to mind. Can you relate to this at all, Bevan? Like if you think about happiness or love, does something come to mind for you as an image?
Yeah, so when you were talking about that, I was sort of closing my mind and I kind of went into this sunlit meadow. That feels like happiness and warmth to me. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. And so when we look at NLP, a part of that is, not only the physiology, that's the part that we think of for unconscious mind, but for the emotions and the thought processes that we have, the behaviors, those all stem from the way that we represent something internally. And so your impression and image of happiness is going to be different from, all the listeners. Your picture looks a certain way, and my picture looks a certain way, but we still have that same word that we use for happiness. And so there's a lot of limitations around the conscious mind. And the thing about NLP is we can use language, we can use physiology, and we can use some of these programs that we have running to work together on our behalf. And so when we look at healing, it can be one of the most powerful tools.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the things you teach is that, healing and personal growth and development really seems to focus a lot on the conscious things, the things that we are aware of. but it's often overlooking the unconscious and the role of that and how important that is. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. Well, the unconscious mind is covert by nature, meaning that it is automatic. It's kind of running in the background. And so that's one of the reasons why it's often overlooked. Another reason why is that, sometimes people are a little hesitant to delve into the unconscious mind, especially if they consciously are aware of some of the history, some of the things that they've been through that have been difficult or painful. And so sometimes there is a hesitancy to delve into the depths of the unconscious mind for fear of what they'll find there. And I find that with a lot of empaths is that they know what their baggage is, they know what their triggers are, and sometimes they don't want to step into that because they do feel so intensely. But it is, like I said, such a powerful tool to unlocking that. Another reason is that in our society, I would say, and you might agree with this, is that we are taught to do things and on our own. We're taught to take action. We're taught to be logical. And so those types of conscious behaviors are, I would say, dominant in our society. Would you agree with that, or what are your thoughts?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was talking with a client this morning about that, so much of our society is sort of the masculine energy, which is do, take care of things, solve problems. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's really great. But going into this sort of unconscious, intuitive, deeper side of ourselves is a place where we're developing still collectively and individually. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And so just to give you an idea of how amazingly powerful the unconscious mind's influence is that it controls 95 to 99% of everything that we do. And only a measly 5% or less is the conscious mind doing its thing. And so when we just look at that simple piece of science, it really puts things into perspective. And it's almost like you're walking through life with blinders on if you don't tap in to that source, that other 95%, which is the unconscious mind. It is such a powerful supercomputer, we can say, as far as resetting certain programs, deeply rooted memories that people have that can be holding them back from the goals that they have for their health, for their relationships, for their well-being, for their career, and really any other part of their life.
What really strikes me about what you're talking about, Karyn, is that not only can we realize like 95% of everything we're doing and expressing is unconscious, but the same thing is true of everyone else out there. and like you said at the beginning, different people have a different story, picture in their mind about what happiness is and what success is and what all these different things are. And this is where I think we get into conflict sometimes, right? Or where healing is difficult because, we all have our own version of the unconscious.
Exactly. And the thing that I like to bring to the attention of my clients who are also empaths is that most of our communication is not verbal, meaning that it's not things that we say. It is our energy, it is our tone of voice, it is our physiology. So really only 7% of what we say is the overall communication. So it's a tiny percentage again, and the rest of that is nonverbal. And so when we look at the abilities that empaths have, they can really tap in to their unconscious mind very, very easily, and it makes the change so much more powerful for them.
So you say that, people do affirmations or they set goals, but then they get frustrated because it doesn't provide the results. Can you tell us more about your experience with that?
Yeah, I was one of those people who, I've done a lot of self-development through the years, and affirmations were a very positive guidance for me. in my earlier years. And what I found when I learned about NLP and mental and emotional release is that, through my own life as well as with my clients, is that affirmations can take you only so far when you're carrying a lot of emotional and mental baggage, meaning old stories from the past, old ways of thinking, behaviors that are no longer serving you. And until those things are dealt with, and I'll just kind of call it mental and emotional baggage for, to kind of put all of that negativity and heaviness and history into one place, is that when that's not dealt with and people are trying to set goals and say affirmations, there's this whole pile, or we can say all of these suitcases that they are figuratively carrying with them as they try to attain a goal. And so that's why the affirmations and the goal setting, the vision boards, all of that's very powerful once the mental and emotional baggage is released. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So what if a person, who's tuning in today said, well, I've done all of this healing work. I've done all of this, introspection. I meditate, I do these things. But then these things from my past, these patterns keep coming back up and I feel like I'm self-sabotaging myself. What would you tell them?
What I would tell them is, first of all, to know that there's always hope. There's so much power that we have within us when we tap into the unconscious mind, that they can unlock that key within themselves to access everything that they need to move forward in a positive way. And what NLP specifically is designed to do is to help people overcome some of that deeper programming so that they can make better decisions and they can meet their goals and they can let go of the baggage, the self-sabotage. I mean, one of the things about self-sabotage is that there is a conflict within the unconscious. And so I want to give you guys a visual of how the conscious mind can kind of work against or in conflict with the unconscious mind and how that impacts the results that we get. So if you were to picture a big cruise liner, like a big ship, okay, there's one captain, right? So the captain is symbolizing your conscious mind, right? We think he's in control, he's driving the ship. He gets to decide, or she gets to decide where the ship will end up. And that is equivalent to goal setting or having a specific result that you want in your life. Now, along with this ship, this cruise liner, there is a crew. And the crew is made up of many, many, many people. And it takes that crew of people to actually be able to move the ship forward. That crew symbolizes the unconscious mind and the massive impact that it has on that journey. And so if you have a conflict and your conscious mind wants to go one way and the crew is go in the opposite direction, you really don't get very far. And that's basically what self-sabotage is. People have a goal that's, created from their conscious mind, and then there's that other part. So that's the bigger part. It's a 1 to 1 million ratio. So if we look at the captain, he's that one, and then the crew is that 1 million. And that's the power of the unconscious mind. And so I would also mention that it's really easy to start to work with your unconscious mind to be able to restructure the way that you set up your value system, the way you experience the events in your past that might have been painful, the actions that you take, and the behaviors that you have. So that's kind of a long answer there, but it helps to just have a visual of how powerful, everyone's unconscious mind is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what strikes me about this is that the captain, he or she, as a leader, needs to be able to communicate with the crew. And so if we're saying, well, I don't really want to look at the crew, I really don't want to talk with them, they might bring up some things I don't want to hear, which can happen in leadership. But we need to be able to be willing to do that so that we understand where all of those crew members are coming in, where there could be disconnects, where we're not on the same page. Like that's kind of that analogy you're using, right?
Exactly. And would it be helpful if I gave some more examples?
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic.
Okay. So another way that, and this is kind of a real life example that I've seen in several of my clients is, say they want to be successful in their business and they're an empath. They might be an introvert and they want that success and they're very passionate and purposeful in their career. So there's that aspect of them, but then there's another aspect of them, and this is the more unconscious part of them that has a fear of putting themselves out there, fear of being seen, fear of judgment. And because the unconscious mind, one of its prime directives is to protect you and to keep you alive. That's what one of or two of its jobs are. When you start to go for that goal and make progress in your business, there's that unconscious part of you, the crew, that's pulling you backwards because of the fear. And so what mental and emotional release and NLP help to do is to work through that fear in a very simple and lasting process. And so I've worked with clients, and it only usually takes a few sessions for them to release the fear and make sure that their unconscious and conscious mind are moving together.
Yeah, yeah. And there may be people in our audience, Karyn, who have maybe heard about some of these different modalities, but they may not be completely familiar with what is NLP, what is mental and emotional release, and hypnotherapy. Could you describe, like maybe one at a time, like how each of these things work and how you use them?
Sure. I'm going to start with mental and emotional release because we're talking about healing today and creating transformation. And this is one of the most powerful tools that I use. MER for short. So this is a set of techniques that uses an active imagination process where we use a timeline. Everyone's timeline is different. So we basically move throughout that timeline as we let go of negative emotional states, limiting beliefs, and we're able to access in the unconscious mind the very root cause of that particular emotion. And there are 5 main emotions that we deal with, and they're like the big 5. So it's anger, sadness, fear, hurts, and guilt. And sometimes we throw in anxiety or humiliation or low self-worth based on the individual. But the big 5 are the ones that we definitely start with because in general, that's what people carry with them and need to release from their childhood. Whether or not it was traumatic or not, everyone has baggage. So we use that timeline to begin restructuring their experience. And, based on people's belief systems or their own path in their life, they may have that root cause in this life as a child or a baby or even in the womb. And others might have something from previous generations, so something in their lineage. And then there's another aspect of MER that includes past lives. And so what this particular modality helps people with is, it's a vast array, but I've helped people release phobias, release these negative emotions, stop smoking. There's just a wide array of what this particular modality can do. So that's MER. Do you have any questions about that one, or should I jump into it?
No, that makes sense. Kind of moving through the experience and then shifting that energy. I think empaths would be particularly good at this one.
They're amazing.
People are ready and willing to, take a look in temporarily. It's kind of like ripping off the Band-Aid. you can carry all that baggage around for a really long time and have that heaviness, or you can just, let's look at it real quick and let's move through and have a conscious awareness of it and heal that. So yeah, please go on and tell us more.
Yeah. So one of the benefits of MER and NLP is that they're very fast and they don't require you to recount all of the details of a painful experience. So even when I do phobia release, I mean, obviously we're working with something that someone has an intense fear of, or if I'm working with, someone that has PTSD, it's a very similar intensified version of the emotion of fear. And it's very, I just recently did a phobia release and it was only 15 minutes and there was no crying. I didn't need to hear about, I mean, not that crying's bad, but that's a lot of what deters people. And I didn't need to know what everything was that happened. And that's one of the very attractive aspects and benefits of MER and NLP is that you don't need to recount all the painful details in order to heal them.
I love that. I think that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us a little bit about how neuro-linguistic programming kind of differs from that then.
Well, they're kind of used together. Neuro-linguistic programming uses a lot of language patterns to shift people's boundaries on what their problems are. And so when we look at creating change, that change lies just outside the boundaries of where people think they can go. And that's kind of why people get stuck is they're so used to, keeping that boundary around themselves. And I've found this to be true with a lot of empaths and highly sensitive people because it's essential for them to have certain kinds of boundaries. But when it comes to creating healing and transformation in the emotions, especially, you need to actually go beyond those boundaries. And NLP and those language patterns and the way that we can get into the unconscious mind using the language patterns is basically how we do it in NLP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So these patterns it's like a rut or a groove, right? that we get used to.
Yes.
We don't think there's anywhere else that we can drive, but there's a whole nother set of roads that are possible for us. So I love what you're talking about. And then the one that I'm really interested in personally is hypnotherapy. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, hypnotherapy is such a great tool because it's so relaxing and pleasurable. It's really, a great experience for people. Even when they're letting go of some pretty heavy stuff, it's basically using different levels of trance to make changes at the unconscious level. And it sounds a lot like a guided meditation. And some guided meditations have that same quality. But the difference is with hypnotherapy, there are certain suggestions that we're putting into the unconscious mind. And, it's almost like affirmations. And this is usually done after release work. The hypnotherapy is used a lot of times to put those new beliefs, new behaviors in to the unconscious mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions that comes up for me is a lot of highly sensitive people and empaths are also highly intuitive. We just sort of receive a knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes it kind of feels like it bubbles up from somewhere else and then it comes into our consciousness. In your experience, have you noticed if there's a connection between the unconscious and the intuitive?
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah. What can you tell us about that?
Yes. I'm so glad you asked that question. They're very much connected. And as the unconscious mind is freed of a lot of the baggage, there's more intuitive information and the quality of the intuitive information changes as well. A lot of empaths are they're so receptive to the information around them that, they do pick up more than the average person. And when we look within, there's a lot more potential for them to create really deep change within themselves. And, it's definitely connected to the intuition, because then your intuition is able to work on your behalf along with the unconscious mind, and it's just amplified even more.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, getting clear and knowing when that intuitive message comes in, and I think that's amazing. Say there's someone who's listening today and they have all these suitcases, stacked up, and they're like, man, carrying around all this baggage is so heavy. What I really want is just a little day pack, right? Just to take the essentials with me. How would you recommend that someone begins that process of clearing out the mental and emotional baggage that's in the unconscious?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way is to find a practitioner that can facilitate a process. I find that a lot of people try to do it on their own. And while it's really admirable and, I know it does make a difference, it's helpful to have someone that can lead you through that, because, even myself as a master practitioner, I have practitioners that help facilitate my processes as well, because that's the nature of this type of work. It's like, we can't see what we can't see. And we really need to have someone to help facilitate that process. So I would say, reach out to someone who does have this skill and can help to release that. Because like I said, it's very easy. It's a lot easier than people might think that it is.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have our blind spots, and no matter how long you've been in leadership, or even if you're helping others, we all need our own support system for certain.
Totally.
Yeah. And I understand, Karyn, that you have a really generous offer for our listeners today, a master class that generally you are charging for, but you're offering that free to everyone who's on the summit. Can you tell us more about this master class, what they'll learn, and then we'll give them the link to be able to connect and get there.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So this is a 25-minute masterclass. It's all about creating your own rapid breakthrough. And I go into a little bit more detail about some of the things that I shared with you today about the unconscious mind. And it will give you some ways to start to tap into that and understand this process more deeply.
Excellent, excellent. And anyone who's listening today, in order to register for this masterclass and get connected with Karyn's work and really get to experience some of her expertise, you can go to evolutionaryempathsummit.com and then put in /Karyn, and it's spelled Karyn. And of course, the link will be here with this recording as well. We're so excited to have this resource to help all of us. I'm going to go in and connect with your work. I know that I certainly have some blind spots and some extra baggage that I've been carrying as well. So thank you for offering that generously to everyone who's tuning in today.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
I wanted to connect us back to something that you mentioned about values. Yes. And how our values fit into healing at this unconscious level.
Yeah, values are interesting because we think that we choose our values, and our values do develop over time. And like I said before, they're developed between the ages of when you were first born and 7. So a lot of that is based on the things that we've seen, heard, and experienced as a child. So when we look at relationships, for example, people might have the value of trust. And, that sounds great. Trust is trust. But again, that internal representation of trust is different for each and every individual. And so when I work with people and their values, we go deeper into what their motivation is, where that value came from. And I like to find out, is this created on something that is a positive part, or is it a part of them that wants to avoid pain? And so if I ask someone, what is important to you about trust and the value of trust? And, a lot of people say, well, I need to believe that this person is going to tell me the truth. Or trust is important because I don't want to get hurt. So if you hear kind of that negative aspect or that avoidance of being hurt or the fear of not being told the truth, those are examples of what we call move away from energy, which is avoidance energy. And what a lot of people discover when we first do the values is that much of what they value on the unconscious level are things that they don't want. And, same thing with career. It's like when people think of money, money is important in career. I mean, obviously it's like we have to make money for it to be a career, but people have so much baggage around the money. And so with the MER, the hypnotherapy, the NLP work, it helps to reshape what the values are so that they are no longer coming from a place of avoidance and fear, but that they're coming from a place of what they actually want to move toward.
Which actually is, as I hear you describing, it's kind of like the manifestation process. Like, are we manifesting what we don't want, or are we manifesting what we do want? And we might not even understand that that's a self-protection, a self-defense mechanism that we set up maybe early on in our lives to keep us safe, right?
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the jobs of the unconscious mind, is to keep people safe. And, we can look at the unconscious mind as like a brilliant 7-year-old child. That 7-year-old child doesn't want to get hurt again. And until that child understands the lessons in whatever experiences were painful and how to let that go, they can't move forward and will always continue to be in that protection mode. And so when we look at values and the way we spend our time, how we evaluate the time we spend in our lives, because values are big, we can't move forward and accomplish a certain outcome if the values are pulling us backwards. And, I don't like to see people struggle when it comes to creating positive results in their lives. I think everyone deserves to be able to meet their highest potential. And the values are a piece that's, often missed too, because people think that their values are conscious. And, the conscious part of it is that you can name that, in relationships, trust is important, connection is important, fun is important. So those are all values. And, most people can look at that and say, yeah, those are great. I totally agree. Those look amazing. But when you look deeper at what the motivation is, oftentimes that's where you'll find incongruencies.
Yeah, and this may be kind of a philosophical question. So you can tell me whether this is relevant or not. But what comes to me is, if our unconscious kind of brings up all of these old triggers and holds baggage and does all these things, which sometimes may not be in our best interest, what is its purpose? Or is it an old sort of evolutionary piece, and now we're kind of evolving and learning and bringing it out into the light? So what do you think about that?
I love this too. Okay, this is a great question. I know a lot of people think about this, like, why is this coming up? Like, is it for my own good? When we're looking at negative emotions or heaviness in our lives. And the unconscious mind does repress some of the memories until they're ready for resolution. And if they start to rise to the surface, it could be showing up in your dreams. It could appear as a thought or a glimpse of a memory that seems it's coming either through your unconscious or even your intuition. Sometimes they work together to show you what you're ready for. And we always have that choice consciously to say, yes, I'm ready. My unconscious mind is ready to release this and make it conscious. And at that point, that change can start to take place. But there are different layers, obviously, of our growth and development and ability to handle some of the pain that we've gone through. And so when people think, gosh, I've already dealt with this thing, like it's coming up again, or, what do I need to do? And at that point, it simply means there's another layer of that experience that we're now ready to release. There's another level in it could be spiritual development, emotional development, that we're ready to climb and reach toward.
Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming you've probably seen that, like, it comes at exactly the right time. Like, we've walked through enough life experiences that now we're ready to make that conscious. We're ready to let go. It sometimes doesn't seem like it's happening at the right time. We want it to go faster, but yeah, would you say that it's just like, okay, you're ready, and this comes up, and here it is, and now you're ready to deal with it?
Yeah, I would take the attitude of excitement at the possibility of how different your life can look in a positive sense, that those things are coming up for healing and transformation, because that's where you have the most power, is when you start to look at some of those things that you actually know are holding you back and work with them in a way that's going to allow you to move forward in a more effective and positive way. And so I kind of look at it as, yay, there's more baggage. Wow, this is great. And I mean that genuinely, because then the quicker that you handle it, the quicker you're able to move past it. And, with these strategies, it is so much easier to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like you become a masterful baggage handler.
Yes.
You're like, oh, I can just toss this suitcase. I know how this works. I've got this.
Right. I mean, it's so funny because when people release, say, the emotion of anger, for instance, after that, and it's maybe like 10, 15 minutes, it's rather, I wouldn't say disorienting, but maybe a little bit, because they can't seem to find that emotion. And as they look back at some of the events that really triggered them and would really have a negative emotional effect on their day or the choices that they made, they're not able to access the memory in the same way. That's not to say we don't forget, because we remember. That's not the purpose of this work. It's simply to change the quality of your experience around that. And much of that is connected to the lessons that we take with us from those painful experiences.
Yeah. Karyn, I'm just so grateful that you came on today to have this conversation. This is such an important topic for sensitive and empathic people. And thank you so much for doing this work and sharing your wisdom and your insight and allowing yourself to be seen and to help people heal in this way. I just really, really appreciate you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Bevan. And thank you all to joining us here. I mean, this is such an amazing gathering, empowering empaths who are so, so powerful. And so, thank you for putting this together.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. This is an invitation. If you are ready to allow something to come up from your unconscious mind and become conscious and to release it and let go, may this be your invitation today. May you find joy in that process and mastery as you continue to become more aware of who you are and to create a life that just really lights you up.
Thank you for joining the Evolved Empath Summit, brought to you by the Shift Network. To learn more, visit evolvedempathsummit.com. To learn more about our global programs, to support you in waking up in all the areas of your life and taking inspired action, visit theshiftnetwork.com. Thank you again for joining us and for sharing this empowering path of embracing your empathic gifts with your friends and family.